Pittsburgh Sports!
All right. Good night. We're in an episode. I think we're celebrating, if I'm not mistaken, Al Oliver tonight with episode 16. So kudos to Al Oliver. I'm here tonight with Chris Brown Sugar Fletcher, Gary Bubbles Kin, and I'm Dave Bunny Finoli. Good evening, guys.
Good evening, Bunny.
Well, you know, if you're going to be Bunny, I want to be Luann. I want to be Luann at that point.
You're just a Poovy. You don't get the first name. You're just a Poovy, my friend.
All right. I'm going with Poovy.
Oh, man. I think if the Pirates win tonight, that's going to be my Facebook celebration for the Jolly Rogers. Luann Poovy.
I think it should be.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Greg Brown will say everything's great. Greg Brown will say everything's great.
Oh, yes, he will.
Yeah. We actually have Stephen Brault being perfect. I won't jinx it. I didn't say the word. The word. He's perfect, though, in the fifth, although I now have seen Jeff Hartley warm up for the game because he's approaching 50 pitches. So,
wow.
I'm not quite sure, but something tells me in another episode we will be talking about bullpen usage, but not now.
Not now, but that's a hell of a tease.
Oh, that is a tease. Call me a tease. What am I tonight? Bubbles? No.
No, that's me.
Here.
That's
Bunny
me.
the Tease. Bunny the Tease.
You're
Bunny the
I
Tease.
don't take it my
Yes.
nickname. I like my nickname.
All right. You're keeping it. All right. Be your nickname for 2 shows. All right.
I have a bubbly personality, as you guys both know. So.
You do. That could be your new T-shirt.
Yes. Yep.
I've already inquired about making the baloney T-shirt, so we'll talk more about that later.
Oh, beautiful.
But tonight we're gonna do the ultimate tease, a tease that won't be fulfilled for another year, fall of 2020. But we're gonna talk a little about our new project, which I'm pretty pumped up about. I've been doing some nice research on it, and just the ultimate tease is one of the chapters that'll be coming up is not going to finish like originally started.
Wow.
New information coming that disproves the thought, but keeps it in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So, say that. But things I'm most intrigued about that we'll talk a little about tonight, as far as myself, and then we'll certainly get on to things that have intrigued Bubbles and Brown Sugar. I got the trio. It's a perfecto no more, by the way.
Yeah. There is a walk. That one's on me. That's my pass.
So, anyways, I got the perfecto. We got 3 birthplaces in Western Pennsylvania history. You got your birthplace of professional football.
Mm-hmm.
You got your birthplace of college basketball. And you got your birthplace of the new birthplace of professional hockey. So, in each of these cases, it's not clear cut. It's one area battling another for birthplacedom. Can I use that term?
I like it.
I like it. We get it.
All right. But it's fascinating as hell. I mean, the first one is something I've researched over the years, the birthplace of professional football, which all starts with Latrobe and Latrobe's beaten, ass-kicked, just pummeled place in professional football history. Here's a town that, because of a guy who bragged about something that nobody liked to brag about. It's like the guy who farts in a crowd and actually stands up and brags about what he did. It's just not done. Back then, professional football, you're a bragger, aren't you, Brown Sugar?
I am a bragger.
Okay. Yeah,
I stand up and identify that, Dave.
I stand corrected. But, you had a guy, everybody was embarrassed to be paid to play football because They wanted to be pure amateur.
Yeah.
So you have a guy, John Bralier, who's just, screw it. I'm going to tell him I got paid, and I'm going to live the dream. He was a man who got free tickets to every NFL game for a lifetime, the golden pass, so to speak. His town was celebrated as the birthplace of there goes the no-hitter.
And the shutout.
And the shutout. Oh, maybe we jinxed it. We are jinxes here.
I think it's a tattoo on his arm.
Yeah, it could be.
His whole forearm tattoo.
Could be. But anyways, it's sort of about them being the Latrobe being the Cooperstown of pro football, being dubbed, got the Hall of Fame, got the bid for it. They had to raise the money for it. You know, NFL had no money back then to give them. So it's all about first, nobody can raise the money. They build a stadium to house the Hall of Fame game, but don't build the Hall of Fame. They argue whether it'll be a tourist attraction. Yeah, that's going to contribute tens of millions of dollars into your economy every year. And they're afraid it'll overshadow the blue-collar atmosphere of the town. So stories about Canton getting the Hall of Fame and then just their place in pro football history coming to a halt at the hands of a man named Pudge. Fascinating reading if you get to it. I've always thought one of the great stories in pro football. That's not all. You got Geneva College, where you grew up, Fletch. Not far.
Yes, the Gold Tornadoes.
Exactly. Well, they have a long-standing claim themselves to the birthplace of college basketball. Even have a sign. If you have a sign, you got birthplace of college basketball. Right? Well, Vanderbilt a few years ago, they came up with a game that they claimed was before Geneva. Geneva then comes back with a game claimed before Vanderbilt. So this month, and we'll report back a little bit after I get it, I'm going to get the honor to go up to Geneva and basically be shown what they have there. And I'm going to say fairly confident this chapter is going to decide once and for all who is the true birthplace of college basketball. I'm hoping here that it sounds they're confident that it's going to be up near the Beaver Valley, the home of Joe Willie Namath. Say it in Howard Cosell terms.
Joe.
Exactly.
Number 12.
Number 12.
Right.
And the third being our new home of the birthplace of professional hockey. So I have no blessed idea how this is going to turn out. We're going to talk to the gentleman, John Shelkowski, I believe his name is, who found the information. So I look forward to seeing what he found and how it stands up to what happened Michigan or Minnesota, one of the two. I think it's Michigan. What they had to originally claim as the birthplace of professional hockey. So sounds like that's some great information that could give us all three. But each story is intriguing. Each story, certainly the goal is the football thing's pretty much a done deal. But we'll have a claim by Latrobe of what puts them in the race for their piece of the birthplace of professional football. The other two, the idea of the article is to claim definitively who is the birthplace of each sport. So to me, the guy who loves to dig into the old newspapers, this is gold, Jerry. This is gold. So I'm pretty pumped up about that. And I'm going to say another article, which originally it was the article chapter nobody wanted to do, including myself. But it was there at the end, so I took it. An amalgamation of the first uniform numbers and such, and kind of jammed it all together. Well, what we're finding out is in college football, gentlemen, nobody seems to do research. They seem to take the word of somebody, and it is law. Well, the research is finding holes into just about every aspect of what was claimed in the past.
Wow. I always grew up knowing that Pitt invented the college football uniforms.
Well, and that in 1913, Wisconsin and I believe it was Chicago were the first two teams to wear them in one game. We know now that is utterly false, not even close.
Wow.
And Pitt may or may not be the first. So, and it may have not been in 1908 to boot. So there is some, every day something new happens, and it's as if I took, as we were talking to Gary early about juicing with the blue pill. I feel like I've juiced with the blue pill as I'm looking at this stuff, because it's fascinating as hell.
Yeah.
By the time this chapter is over, I'm not sure Western Pennsylvania is even going to hold the damn thing.
Wow.
So, but
Yeah.
I'm what could be originally thought to be the most boring chapter is turning out to be one of the most thrilling chapters I've ever researched. So I don't even know how the thing is. All I know is there's a man who got shunned by his father for marrying his mother's maid, French maid, and then his father took him to his breast after he beat Penn State in 1907 and welcomed him back to the family. This is in the chapter. So it's all there. It's all there, I tell you.
That sounds interesting to me. A French maid and breasts and all this kind of stuff sounds kind of interesting. So
you didn't think that there'd be a French maid when you're talking about uniform numbers, did you?
Not regarding college football uniforms. No, I didn't. So
Oh, my God.
I think the word you want to use for that is bosom.
That's right. We got to watch FCC here.
Bosom.
Okay, bosom. Yeah, because you could also confuse that. Maybe his father was eating a chicken breast. That could be a tad messy. So, but it's history gone wild. That's all I'm saying. History gone wild in this. So
Dave, you're part of the birther movement. Is that what we're to understand now? Is that?
It could possibly be. It could possibly be. I don't know where this is going to end. All I know is Diaz is doing his impression of Francisco Cervelli right now. That's all I know. That's all I know. I think
nobody wants to pitch to him. No one wants Stallings.
Would help him at this point.
Yeah.
Well, if you looked at the replay, the foul ball hit him right on the knee, which a protector right on it. So I'm not exactly sure.
So you're thinking Cervelli. I'm on a stream here, so you're ahead of me right now. So he looks.
So I'm reliant on you two for what's going on.
Here it is. Let's see.
I don't know.
Puss. Okay. You're right. He goes down at that. Mr. Fletch, what have you gotten in your run with Pittsburgh Firsts?
Well, one thing, fellas, that we can't argue, something that happened on this date that we're taping in 1921, and that was the first radio broadcast of a baseball game. Harold Arlen on KDKA, the Pirates beating the Phillies 8-5.
The grandfather of the great Steve Arlen.
Exactly. Well, for me, it was going back. Dave, you and I had written the book Steel City Gridirons, where we did a lot of essays on.
Yeah.
And going back and looking again at Bill Nunn and how he was instrumental in making the Steelers really the first team to scout and actively draft from the traditionally black colleges. One of my favorite stories around that is that they were looking at John Stallworth, and that came from a tip from Bill Nunn, who was managing editor at the Pittsburgh Courier. So he had all these connections within the historically black colleges. So he was telling them about John Stallworth. And the other thing he did is he accidentally kidnapped the game film reel of John Stallworth so no one else would be able to see it. So back in those days, film was hard to get, especially in the black colleges. So they were all set. They were excited about drafting him, and then Stallworth is invited to the Senior Bowl. So now they're worried because they think he's going to shine in the Senior Bowl. Someone's going to find out who he is. For some reason, the coaching staff at the Senior Bowl, instead of playing John Stallworth as a wide receiver, they play him as a defensive back. So he's not really highlighted at all. So They go through that draft, the greatest draft of all time, by the way, 1974.
Yep.
They pick Lynn Swann in the first round. They get Jack Lambert in the second round. They were arguing about Stallworth, but because that film was purloined, not a lot of people knew about John Stallworth, and they took the gamble. They didn't have a pick in the third round, so they went to the fourth round, and they picked Stallworth then, and they were able to get him. I think he was a key ingredient for the Steelers, not only be the first team to win 3 Super Bowls, but the first team to win 4.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, guys, if you would have thought, okay, who's the first team that's going to win 3 Super Bowls? Most of us at that time would have said the Miami Dolphins.
Right.
After 2 pretty dominating performances, they lose that playoff game to the Oakland Raiders, and then the Steelers come in and they win back-to-back. But no one was really sure about that Steeler team at that time. So that was interesting. And the other one that and this one has more of a personal thing for me, and that goes back to 1935, and May 25th, I believe, was the date. And that was when Babe Ruth came to town as a member of the Boston Braves. Now, at the time, Ruth is hitting a very robust 153, I think, at that time, with I think he had 3 homers and 5 RBIs. And 3 of those RBIs had come in the opener. So the Babe is clearly at the end of his illustrious career. They get him, his dismissal from New York was not pretty. I mean, they basically were putting firewood in his locker. They wanted him out. Boston signed him basically, for his name. And they promised him they gave him an assistant manager position and a team vice president position with his hope that he would be a manager or in management after he retired. So anyway, Ruth comes to town. My grandfather, who was 22 years old at the time, working for his father's penny candy grocery store, has to go to Pittsburgh to pick up some supplies, and he ends up going to the game. Now, this is the game that the Babe hits his last 3 home runs, including his final one, which was the first home run to clear the right field area of Forbes Field. So it was a monster shot.
Big shot, yeah. Yep.
There's talk about how it just continued to just hit the pavement and roll down the street for blocks and blocks afterwards. But after that game, my grandfather runs into Babe Ruth, and he gets him to sign a baseball.
Jeez.
And
wow.
I still have that baseball. That's really the prize collection of anything that I have.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, the great Gus Miller, who we all spent many a time in the Gus Miller newsstand.
Yeah, this newsstand.
Ended up, I forget how
that's right, he had the ball.
Yeah, he ended up finding it. I want to say he found it over 600 feet away from home plate.
That's what they claim.
Yeah, so just a lot of great stories from that, and what a
that's a great story.
Baseball world.
Yeah.
Just what a neat moment to have in your history, and of course, being the first to clear the roof qualified it for this book. But I mean, to me, that is one of the great forgotten games in Pirate history because, of course, it had nothing to do with the Pirates, even though they won the game.
Yeah.
But I always thought that to just be a neat thing in Pirate history, and I'm sure it's fun to talk about, especially with your background with your grandfather there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's and the funny thing is, there's a little smudge on that ball. Apparently, my uncle had, like in the movie Sandlot, had taken it out and was actually throwing it. So it got a little scuffed up, but
different day. Yeah, different day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember seeing footage of that game for some reason. Now, it might have been staged, but there wasn't a lot of people there either. I mean,
10,000.
There wasn't a lot of people there, and I mean, Ruth was clearly at the end, so the fact that he was even in the lineup was a little bit unpredictable in those days. But
well, the funny thing is, I was doing a little research. Up into that game, the Braves had played 27 games, and Ruth had started 22 of them.
Oh, okay. So
for the end, but, he was a name. He was getting people to come in, especially in Boston in those days.
They were bad. That
was a bad team.
Yep.
Now, did anybody ever find out the name of the young guy who William Bendix-Babe Ruth tapped on the shoulder to run for him because he was so exhausted the first base after the home run?
After he drank the big glass of milk.
Yes.
Too. Don't forget that part of it. He saved a puppy at some point.
He saved the puppy. Yeah. They operated on the puppy because he was Babe Ruth.
Oh, my.
That was one of the classic moments. But if I'm not mistaken, he was so excited hitting 714, he ran the bases himself.
Well, Gary, for you, I mean, Forbes Field has to have a special thing. You're doing something on the heavyweight fight there, correct?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Pittsburgh's boxing history up until probably around that time was pretty significant, but it only had one heavyweight. I mean, Jack Johnson fought there against Tony Ross, I think not too far from up your way, Fletch, in 1909. Ross wasn't a top-flight contender. After Johnson beat Tommy Burns in Australia, he basically took a number of years off, 3 or 4 years off. But he fought Tony Ross out there. So I guess it technically isn't the only heavyweight championship fight, nor the first. Actually, Dave, which is a little bit of a misnomer. I don't know how I'll approach that in the book. But the reality of the matter is a real high-level championship fight, despite Pittsburgh's great boxing history, which, Douglas Kavanaugh talked about with us, didn't happen until 1951, and then there was never another one again until Larry Holmes fought Ronaldo Snipes 30 years later, which is a little bit surprising, because boxing always thrives in either big metropolitan areas or industrial towns. But
right.
I mean, I think both of those guys are Hall of Fame fighters. Nobody knew it at the time. Charles wasn't highly respected at the time. He was considered to be a great light heavyweight, not a great heavyweight. But as it turns out, he did damn well against heavyweights throughout most of the latter part of his career. And, Walcott had a couple different careers and, again, very underrated in terms of heavyweight history. They just happened to be born into the wrong era where you had, everybody glorifying Lewis and then Marciano thereafter. But, I'm looking forward to writing about that one. I mean, I know a little bit about the fight, but obviously I'll learn a lot more. And, it happened at Forbes Field, which – you don't see that anymore either unless you go to the UK, and that's another rarity about it. There aren't that many heavyweight fights that took place outside. Johnson, right. Jeffries.
And it was the first heavyweight championship in the city of Pittsburgh, correct?
I mean, technically, I guess it is.
Yeah.
Johnson was the heavyweight champion of the world in 1909, Dave. I'm not sure.
Well, no, I understand that, but you said that was near Beaver Valley.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's in the Pittsburgh area. That would be accurate. That is correct. So, I guess in the city of Pittsburgh, that's accurate. But in the Pittsburgh area, hypothetically, I guess you could say Johnson Ross would have been a something that if Johnson would have lost, which he didn't come close to losing, you could say that. But the reality of the matter is in the city of Pittsburgh itself, that is clearly the best one, or the first one. I think to me, in this topic, still to me, the 1903 World Series.
Yeah.
Is something that, to me, whether you're from Pittsburgh or not, with the World Series being such a big institution, it may have lost its luster a little bit lately, as we know, but still, there's still a lot of interesting stuff surrounding that World Series, like how it came together, and, how they got it done when the next year it didn't even happen.
Right. That's the thing to me that's always been interesting is that you don't have a 1904 World Series.
I mean, it's because of McGraw and his feud with Van Johnson, primarily, as we all know. But the fact is, you had one and then you had a gap, which makes it special in its own right. And you had two really fine teams with a lot of Hall of Fame players on it. Looking back, it was a 9-game set. Went 8 games, also very unusual. From that point on, it never did that again. And it's the first one. And to me, that's that. I'm not writing about that one. Someone else. I think it's Bill doing it, Dave. But that's just a fascinating. And then there's been some question marks, which I don't know if Bill will touch on this, but, a lot of those early World Series have some question marks. I mean, there's a lot more writing coming out about this. Now, of course, it just might be controversy making, but there's a lot of question marks about 03, 05, 06 even, and then, even the pennant race in 1908 about was there some strange stuff going on. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. That's never really been documented about 1903, but it'd be interesting to see how Bill handles that, if at all.
Yeah. I mean, 1908 certainly a Pittsburgh connection with Pullum and the umpire dispute.
Yep.
Game.
I think it's more the 08 race is interesting with the Giants. It's never been fully documented, but then, when I guess it was it Nick Young or Heidler, Pulliam, a bunch of people got together in New York, and then they basically never answered the question as to whether or not somebody approached Red Dew, the Phillies catcher, and threatened him if they don't lose, they'd either mess them up or here's some money to lose.
Right. But they said that controversy was one of the reasons he did commit suicide.
It may have been because he may have known something that he, quite frankly, he had his problems, as we know, with the Giants to begin with.
Yeah.
But that whole era is interesting, and I don't think that it taints anything associated with these World Series. Those were just the conditions at the time.
Yeah.
But, the 1903, when, Krieger made some comments on the Red Sox side that kind of indicated that he was approached. He wasn't definitive. He didn't say anything. But, it would be interesting to see. Doheny lost his mind, but he was pitching up until that point. And then Philippe had to work all the time. So, there was some stuff. You look at it now from afar, it looks a bit different. But nonetheless, 1903 World Series to me is something that's become an institution and Pittsburgh related.
Sure.
The one I'm looking forward to, Dave, is the one that you gave me and I decided to take because I love the era, that 1895 to 1920-25, is the Pitt 1910 season. I don't really care if football was a mass play game then, or their schedule wasn't as strong as some of the other claimants at that time. To win all 9 games and not give up a point,
right?
It's amazing even in that era of football. You figure at one point in one of those games, somebody recovers a fumble or somebody gets outside and runs for a touchdown. To go 9-0-0, whatever it was, 289-0 is amazing. And there's a lot of people that still believe that they probably should be named the national champions. So I can't wait to dig into that to see if I can make that argument. I think, Dave, you've made this one before. Right. I'm not going to break new ground here, but just the season itself is a pretty remarkable story to go.
Bringing it out, and they actually, and this is the quizzical thing about college football and claimed national champions. They were claimed off an article done in 1967 by Dan Jenkins, who I had the honor of working with on my Pitt book.
Yeah.
And they did great research, and that's what a lot, if not most of the schools, claim their national championships off of that article.
Yeah.
But Pitt's 1910 team, which I don't understand why they don't claim that one as a national championship season, because they were actually named national champions by a couple of outfits.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe it's just so far back, but I wonder why you wouldn't grab that.
No, it's a phenomenal season. Thompson, if I'm not mistaken, died in the war. World War I as a hero. Was just the great underrated coach of that era. Just a tremendous coach, and certainly a Hall of Famer too, to boot. So this is going to bring out that gear. It's going to bring out that team. And that's a great thing about the book is this could be one of the great Pitt teams of all time, certainly in the top 5 or 6 of all time that nobody knows about.
Certainly, look, and nobody in those days, you can't be faulted for playing a regional schedule. That's what everybody did in those days, unless you're in the Ivy League, which was then the SEC of the time.
Right.
That's what you did. So you can't fault people for that. Yeah, maybe some of those opponents were not of the level as some of the Midwestern teams, or even some of the big Eastern powers. But what are you supposed to do about that in those days? That's life. That's the way it was.
That's what you did. And you know what? In Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania, some of the great players and teams were here. W&J. Certainly Carnegie Tech eventually. Duquesne.
Penn State. Even Penn State in that era was competitive.
Was a competitive team. So, it's so tough. You think about how tough it is to see every top 25 team now and rate them.
Yep.
Back then, it was impossible. You saw what you saw from your era, and
that's it. And your region. Your region. Yep.
So they would be
no radio. Yep.
They would take train trips to around the eastern end, and they would see camps and practices, but they wouldn't see every team play. It was, to me, I'm with you. I think what they put on the field is as good a resume in 1910 as anybody would have had.
And we're running out of time. Last thing I want to throw in to kind of jump on what Chris was saying. It doesn't have to do with Ford Field, but it's got a mythical quality to it, and that's the ABA Piper's title. Hardly anybody saw them. We were too young, all of us. I mean, I think you obviously got the great Connie Hawkins, but a great team top to bottom in a league that, quite frankly, very innovative even from year one. Nobody really saw them. They probably didn't get a lot of press out there, even for that era, but they win that title. And I think whenever you got that kind of mystery, startup league like that, something that far back or whatever, to me is intriguing. Hopefully our readers will agree. Can't wait to
show us what you got. Show us what you're wearing tonight.
That's what I got tonight. I actually found some of my Pittsburgh clothes in this house full of ghosts.
There you go.
Got the Pittsburgh Piper shirt there. So, right.
There you go.
So, see, now that wasn't a hook or whatever you guys call it, but that's a good end. Okay. I have a prop, not quite like Fletch's usual prop we have, but I have a prop. So,
but here's the thing I really loved about the ABA, and I came late to the party. I mean, I did go to a Condors game when they were there, but guys, I love the basketball.
Yep.
And there was a time when that basketball was outselling the NBA ball, and it's because that multicolored ball, you could see the spin. How beautiful is that? Why don't we have that? I mean, you look at all the innovations in the first. A lot of it came from the ABA. I mean, the whole dunk thing, the slam dunk contest, that originated in the ABA. Yeah. But the one thing I wanted to mention, Dave, too, is you mentioned uniforms. One of the chapters I'm going to be doing is talking about some of the Pirates uniform things that they've done. And they were the first team to wear polyester uniforms.
Yep.
In 70 was the first year of that. And you think about this when I played Little League, I wore flannels. I don't know about you guys. But
I had a mix. Yeah, I wore both. But yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Boy, it got hot wearing those flannels. And you imagine in the day they're traveling out to St. Louis in the middle of the summer. Those guys had to drop a few pounds during those games with those old heavy uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
And the Pirates were also the first to mandate using the batting helmet. And this was years after the Ray Chapman, Carl Mays thing. So that to me is just stunning that it took that long to have actual head protection.
Yeah, 35 years practically, or 36 years. Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh and Oakland A's, and they were the uniform innovators.
God, I love those
two organizations. They really were.
Hey, because of the Pirates, we were allowed to wear polyester pants at Catholic school. Okay, so there's that connection.
Help with the heat too, the air conditioning.
But you think about it, it was it was Major League Baseball's attempt to get younger fans.
Yeah,
well, that's true. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah,
it was.
And they caught us because, I mean, who doesn't love those uniforms from that time when we're growing up? Love them.
I wish they'd go back to that a little bit. The Pirates do a better job than a lot of teams in Major League history about honoring their history. A lot better than a lot of other organizations. But they don't. They did that one year they wore those, but they don't go back to that a lot. They go back more to the 79, like all those mixes. They don't seem to go back to the 71, and I'm not really sure I understand why. But
man, you had to have a matrix
honor their bullpen
those 79 ones, though. It's like, okay, today we're going to wear the black pants and the striped shirt, or well, let's go all black today. It's it's 97 degrees. Let's just go all black. What the hell?
Yeah.
When the Phillies were out there, so I watched most of that series. And Tekulve was hysterical because he said, I'd have to have these pieces of paper in my bag, and he goes, people don't realize you had to take nine different pieces of uniform in your bag because we didn't know what we were going to do day to day. He said, it got really confusing. He goes, and we'd be looking at each other. Which one are we wearing today? Was it the yellow pants? Is the black? Like he said, it was more.
The great thing I always wish they had done is come out everybody with a different combination.
They did that in the AA in the 80s. Remember the 1880s? They did that. Your uniform was where you played was the color of your jersey. Remember the American Association tried that. Could have went back to that. So,
oh man,
that'll be an interesting one too, though, because. The innovation of trying different things and the different looks and stuff. Now a lot of teams are doing it with the blue shirts and the red shirts and stuff like that. The Pirates in Oakland were the first ones to come up with all these changes.
Absolutely. And I remember the controversy then. I remember my father being pissed as we would be pissed at, things baseball now is trying to do to capture the youth. But I love that uniform. That mustard uniform was awesome.
The mustard hat with a black bill.
Absolutely. Guys, this is a project we're looking forward to. We'll have the Three Rivers book coming out by the end of this year. But this is a book that I'm really pumped up about seeing, because things are changing very quickly as we're researching, and it's just going to be interesting as hell as this book is going to end up different than what we originally thought. And that's a good book. And I'm happy about it. Gentlemen, you have a good night. We will see you.
See you later.
All right.
All right.